Hey, we should grab coffee sometime.
This is one of the most frequently used phrases by creatives seeking to set up a meeting and connect.
Who knows how many ideas, plans, and relationships have been built over a cup of coffee? This is why we decided to start the Creatives Grab Coffee podcast.
A platform where we invite creatives to come and discuss various topics about the industry, all over a cup of coffee.
So let us start.
Today we're actually having coffee from one of the coffee shops of our former alma mater, Balzac's. Have you ever had Balzac's before?
No.
Yeah, it's actually really, well, technically now you're having it.
I think I like that Costco coffee a bit more.
You think you like the Costco coffee more?
Yeah.
What? It's got to be Costco. That's what it is. They just add that little flavor, you know.
That bulk coffee that just has that it just tastes better for some reason. Whenever you get like boutique coffee, it tastes like it's supposed to be good.
It's like the idea of it.
But
is
deep
good.
down, you know, it was not worth what you paid for it.
Yeah. It definitely is not at the level that it should be otherwise. But
we should do different coffees each.
Well, that's kind of the
Okay,
idea,
okay.
right? Like that was the whole point. Like I wanted to bring this one. The next one I want to bring on. Well, we'll save it for the next podcast for when we share that. But
We'll do reviews at the end of each podcast.
yeah. Anyways, so for today's topic, we're going to be talking about starting a business and what are some of the thoughts that you have going into it? What are your goals and expectations are versus what you learned down the road?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I always found the classic interview question that people used to ask people was like, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Yeah.
You know, and we're now actually at that point with the business where it's like, this is 5 years on. So where did we see ourselves 5 years ago? You know, like where are we now? You know, and I just wanted to, if you want to start off, you know, like what were some of the expectations you had going into starting the business?
So I think going into it, I've just really had two ideas of where we're going to go with this. And number one was that we were going to be doing a lot of cool projects with high-level businesses, so like not so large-sized corporations. And then the other idea I had of it was that we were going to be pretty big by the 5-year mark, to the point where we had like an office, we had employees, and we were just taking on like producing roles, something like that, to that effect, right?
Mm-hmm.
But looking back on it now, we should have actually sat down and written out our vision for the company, because I don't think we did that. We just had our own personal ideas of where it was gonna go, but it would have been good to actually just sit down and write it out.
When you say cool types of projects, like what type of projects were you expecting us to kind of be taking on?
Well, at the time, because we started off pretty strong, right? Like right when we were starting the company, or right when we started the company, we started doing work with ad agencies. So we were doing work with like on projects like KFC, Pizza Hut, Expedia, and then we were also doing work with Scotiabank, right? So I thought that was going to continue even further.
So you're saying because we had such a strong start with such brand names, we were thinking, okay, you know, we have all these great brands
Right off the bat,
like we can only go higher from here.
Yeah, it's just exponential growth from here on out.
It's funny because when we were starting it out, I was originally thinking that we would be kind of trying to focus more on creating narrative work and then having the business projects and the corporate clients on the side to just kind of fuel it a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one thing we quickly realized is that there's a need for a bigger focus on the corporate side. I wasn't exactly too sure how the growth would kind of go, because when we were starting the business, I was still riding this wave, as I mentioned in the last podcast, where work was just kind of coming in, and I wasn't focusing too much on, you know, like when it goes in the lows, what do we do from there, right?
But you said narrative. We really didn't do any narrative work.
We didn't, but that's what we kind of were talking about wanting to do, right? That was something we discussed in the beginning that we wanted to kind of start pushing forward in, you know, like try to create, you know, short films, features maybe down the road, but obviously that is a part of the business where there is no money being made, right? Those are more passion projects. And in terms of the business, we realized, okay, we need to shift it and focus more on the corporate on corporate clients that bring in the money.
Yeah.
And luckily for us, that's how we started. We had the big names, as you mentioned. Not only did we have some big names starting off, but very quickly we made connections with several ad agencies.
Yeah.
And those ad agencies started feeding us work with other brands such as Pizza Hut, KFC, Expedia, etc.
Yeah. Yeah.
But one thing I noticed later on was that there are highs and lows in the business. You know, it's almost as if it's seasonal. And that was one thing we did not really expect in the beginning. And not really many people mentioned it to us as we were starting out.
For some companies, like people that we know, like they experience the seasonal ups and downs, but other people we know don't experience it. They're constantly working all year round, right? So we were also too young to know like which one we were going to be, right?
Yeah. Well, the other thing that we didn't realize is that we were trying to compare ourselves with a lot of agencies that have also been established for a very long time. A lot of these agencies and companies that have been that are perceived to work a lot, they've been around for at least 15 to 20 years, and they've had that line of business going for so long. So they're always going to have work coming in. And
sorry. And the other thing too is that even if they've just recently started their company and they get all that work, they have all the connections that they've built over that like 20-year span, right?
Yeah. These are people that have been working in the industry for 10 to 15 years. They have huge networks of people that they can reach out to and they can find work. And that's why we were a bit surprised. I was like, oh, you just started the business a few months ago, but you already have this much work.
Yeah.
You already have an office. You already have a team of 5 people just off the bat like that. It's we were a little bit surprised by that, and we were thinking, okay, maybe we have that potential, but we didn't really realize going into it is that, you know, we're really starting from
scratch, from zero.
Yeah.
Literally.
Starting from scratch has other limitations. There are some benefits to it, of course, but that was one of the biggest challenges that we were facing. And to be honest, it's something we still face because, you know, we have seen a steady growth in the business every year, which on paper is great. You know, it's always good to see a business growing, but to get it to a level like that, where it's very majorly established with a lot of different networks, you know, it just takes even longer time. I see it almost coming maybe even another 5 years before we can get it to that level if we really stick to it like that.
Yeah, 100%.
So one thing I want to kind of go over is after 5 years now running the business, what are 3 key things that you have learned?
3 key things.
We'll do one at a time.
I wrote these down just so I wouldn't forget. Okay, that we've learned, right?
Just start with one, and then
I'm going to start
elaborate.
with the first one. So number 1 is that it takes a long time to learn the skills to A, run a business, and then B, just being a creative at the same time, right? Because we do both. We run our business and then we also go shoot, right? Now, to shoot, you need to, you know, it takes a long time to learn how to compose your shots, light the scenes, edit the whole puzzle together to make it into something. That takes a long time, right? I feel like I've just recently finally figured that out. But up until then, it was just like a learning curve, like a giant learning curve, right?
Yeah.
And then on the business end of things, it's the same thing, right? Like it takes a while to figure out how to you know, reach out to your clients, how to go through the whole client management side of things, you know. So yeah, it definitely is hard to find that work-life balance between the two, because both are in a way full-time jobs. You know, you have your in a lot of bigger agencies, they have their chief operations officers who basically run the day-to-day. They help the team find clients, continuously network, continuously do sales. Whereas then there are the creative directors who are handling all the creative aspects with the clients, and also, you know, helping organize the shoots with their producers, and then just kind of managing that aspect. Those are 2 separate jobs, but when you're taking on both roles, it is hard to kind of
it is hard to find the balance where sometimes you are doing a lot of one and then the other one suffers.
That's one thing I think we ran into a lot, is that we'd become overwhelmed because it's hard to produce and then on the other side direct and DP the work. So when we'd focus on one, the other one would 100% suffer.
Yeah.
And then like when we tried to focus on both, it was like we're giving half of our attention. So they were both kind of like growing, but at a slower rate.
So what do you think is like maybe the solution that we need to kind of continue with moving forward?
Well, I think we were starting it this year, which was good, which was bringing on freelancers to shoots, right? So if I'm producing the project, I'll just bring a DP, and then I'll produce and direct for the most part. So you can focus on the bigger picture, right? The guy who's DPing, you can just get all the shots and then you could just oversee it. And then, you know, if he misses out on one or two, just get those as well. And then once that's done, you know, hire an editor and have them work on the project, because editing takes a long time, man. It takes like 20 to 30 hours for like what, a 1 to 2 minute promotional video. That's really half the week. If you're gonna work on it, might take the whole week too, right? So it's either you edit this project or you work on trying to find the next project, right?
Yeah, it's definitely hard finding that balance. And I remember one of the shoots that we did this year before the lockdown, with COVID-19. There was that project that we did for the AMA where I went in to help produce and direct it, and we were interviewing about 17 marketing legends. And I think if I was trying to do everything at that point, you know, also shoot it, do the interview,
Too much.
it would have been too much. And that's why we hired one of our freelancers, Anthony Voltsinis. Like he's a great shooter,
Great editor too.
great shooter, great editor, and he really helped to make the process great because I knew I could trust him with the shooting aspect of it, and then I could focus on my attention with the client and with the interviewing of each person for the videos. So I think we're definitely on the right track right now going forward, trying to balance things out like that, because that way we're also bringing in other creatives that have their own spin that they can bring to the table, because sometimes you just need that in a business as well. You need other people's influence in there.
Yeah, it's like a fresh set of eyes, right?
Yeah. So for me, one of the things that I learned is that whenever you're starting a business like this, try to do as much as you can in the beginning, because when you do that, you can learn a hell of a lot. You know, you have this idea that you want to do only X, Y, Z type of work, and you don't want to do anything else. But, you know, when an opportunity comes in the beginning, I strongly believe that you need to take it, because you never know where you can learn from it. I mean, in the beginning, we weren't exactly planning to shoot weddings on the side. You know, that wasn't something that was in our plan, but a lot of opportunities came up where you and I could freelance, working with other companies that handled weddings specifically. We can come in, shoot weddings for them, and we were learning a lot about how to be very flexible and nimble on sets. You know, obviously weddings are a little bit different, but we found that those were very high stress situations where, you know, if you were able to make a quick decision just like that, imagine how much simpler a corporate type project would be, where it's a lot slower paced.
Yeah, I think the best thing about shooting weddings is that if you become good at it, you'll learn. I think the biggest takeaway is that you could gain a lot of social skills, because you're meeting so many people, and you have to break the ice with each one of them, and that takes a lot of skill, right? So you need to be able to socialize, get very comfortable with people. And I think you could tell who shoots weddings when you do corporate work, because they're way more outgoing and social on set. People that don't do weddings, they're a bit more reserved, you know, like not as social.
They're there to do their work.
They're there to do their work. It's very noticeable. It's very noticeable. And I know like that's the biggest thing I've taken away from that. Like that's helped me a lot with dealing with clients and dealing with people. It's just naturally made me more outgoing and social.
Yeah, of course. And like definitely like from weddings, like the things that you learn also on the fly, that's the biggest takeaway is that with weddings, you learn how to make decisions like
On
that.
the spot.
Because a lot of the time, like obviously on sets in big studio shoots or in corporate projects, decisions need to be made, and obviously there's more time to be made there. But when you are confident enough to make it on the spot, you can help the production move along
Yeah.
a lot more quickly and efficiently, which is valued with a lot of people and agencies these days.
I think it also makes you a bit more creative as well because um, you'll get to a certain point when you do weddings that you've already seen it all, right? And to make it interesting for yourself and also better for the people that hire you, right? Because you do want to get more work. You try to become more creative. So when you get on the scene, you're instantly thinking of like, okay, I know how to do the basic shots that I need to get, but what can I do that's a bit more interesting this time, right? So you're always thinking ahead 2 steps, going like, oh, maybe I could shoot through like that glass so that'll give me some cool distortion effect or whatever, right? So then you could take that creativity, you could practice that creativity and then take that to other corporate shoots as well, right? So when you get to a set on a corporate project, then you can also try to apply the same creativity, right?
Yeah, it's basically training your brain to think outside the box in a more consistent basis, and also trusting that. Because obviously, if you haven't practiced being creative as often, sometimes it's harder to trust if what you're about to try out is going to work or not.
It's like a testing ground, basically.
Exactly. And it's interesting that that's kind of where we came from by doing weddings and then kind of applying it to LAPSE as a whole and bringing that level of thinking to the business. Like I even went as far as like doing challenges, like challenging myself. All right, if I use just this one lens the whole day, what could I get with this?
Yeah.
And sometimes you'd be surprised at how amazing the type of work that comes out from that, because, I'm also a strong believer, where sometimes limitations can help bring out other types of creativity that you wouldn't have expected, right? It's like unexpected creativity.
Yeah.
But anyways, so I'd say the next thing that I learned starting the business was that, and I think it took us a couple years to learn this, is learning when to say no.
That's a good one.
Because like obviously like you want to make the client happy. At the end of the day, you want to make sure the client is happy. But there's going to be situations where they might end up asking for things that are not possible, but you still want to try to help them. And in the beginning, out of obligation, you want to try to make them happy. So you're saying, yeah, we could totally do this by the morning when they email you at 8 p.m.
Yeah.
Like this is just an example.
Would you say that also for new clients coming up to us with a proposal?
Oh, 100%. Like you especially want to do that. People especially want to do that when there's a new client coming in or a prospective client coming in, because you want to show to them that you are the problem solver. You want to help solve whatever issues they have. But sometimes there are some unrealistic things that are asked of that you just have to learn to confidently say no. And they won't give you a bad response to that. They will respect you for it. They will ask you, okay, great. What do you think is doable? Like this is how it is most of the time.
There's some that'll just say, okay, whatever, moving on. And I guess those are the red flags that thank God you kind of passed on them.
Exactly. There are many. There's always going to be those one or two outliers out there where they're going to try to ask for the world and try to take advantage of you, and you just have to learn when to say no. Like we've gone through those situations several times, and we've tried to be as helpful as possible, but you have to learn when to say no. It's the other biggest reason for that is sometimes you could even experience burnout. Like imagine if you took on 10 gigs in like a week and you just said, yes, I will do it myself, all of it. You're going to burn out.
Yeah. And it's worse if you take on a project knowing that you might under deliver based on what the expectations are.
Yeah.
It at least it makes you look worse.
Exactly.
Than if you just said no.
Exactly. Like you should also always know where your abilities lie. If someone comes to you, say, and they need a whole video done with just animations, and you're not exactly an animator,
Yeah.
either suggest someone who can help them with that, or bring in people to the project that can help take care of that aspect. You know, you always want to make sure the client is taken care of at the end of the day. But at the end of it, you just have to trust your gut. No matter what it is, trust your gut, and it'll always be the right decision. At least 99% of the time, it'll be the right decision for you. Because if you can't trust your gut, then like, how can you make other decisions?
Yeah. Okay, so my second takeaway is that you really have to plan for growth, because it doesn't happen naturally it'll happen on its own if you're lucky, but it won't be the exponential type of growth that you really are looking for, right? Mm-hmm. And you'll plateau eventually if you don't plan for it, right? Which I think we were experiencing as well. Like, we had exponential growth the first 2 to 3 years, and then it just kind
2
of
years, yeah.
First 2 years, maybe even third year, and then it started to plateau after that.
Yeah.
We were still increasing, but it wasn't.
It went like really fast, and then just slow,
Yeah.
marginal increases year after year. Like, don't get us wrong, we were working on some really cool projects. We got to meet a lot of really interesting people, but
Yeah.
in terms of the actual numbers, like that's what I like. Over the last year and a half, I started looking at the numbers from year to year. It's like, okay, we grew creatively,
Mm-hmm.
we grew with experience, but did the business grow in value
I think we didn't notice it because we were doing work through LAPSE. We were freelancing for other video production companies,
as well.
and we were freelancing for weddings. So we had 3 income streams.
Yeah, that's
So we didn't notice that our primary, most important income stream was,
suffering in a way.
not doing as well as it should have been, right?
Yeah. If we were basically just focusing, if we were only on the business, and we were only relying on that with those numbers,
we would have been sweating a lot earlier.
we would have been sweating a lot earlier, and maybe we would have had to have closed down the business even, because
Yeah.
like at the end of the day, when you look at the numbers, you have to also build the company in a way where if other people look at it and decided to join, would they want to join?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so now.
Well, first you got to do it like it's like that Maslow's pyramid thing. First you got to take care of your basic needs. So it would have been my salary and your salary would have had to been covered, right?
Mm-hmm.
We could live comfortably off the business, right?
Yeah.
And then after that, we could look into adding other people, and then after that, expanding to office, and then go from there.
But that goes back to what you were saying, where you have to plan for everything right from the get-go. We kind of planned it in the beginning, but I
think it was just like I said earlier on, it was like an idea we both had in our heads.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like when you have an idea for a story, and in your head it's like this cinematic masterpiece that is going to make way more money than Tenet at the box office, and then you start writing it down, you're like, oh, this is garbaggio, this sucks, like I gotta fix this up. So I think if we wrote it down, so again, planning growth is paramount, and I think we're just in the process of doing that right now. We finally, like, it's embarrassing to say this, but after 5 years we finally sat down and wrote out like
a plan,
a business plan.
Yeah.
It's not the best business plan, we're still working on it, but we took that step and actually started writing it down, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, like, on the surface, like we've always been helpful with whichever client has come our way. We've always been able to do great work and with the people around us. But in terms of on the back end, like us ourselves, we haven't taken care of ourselves. Yeah. That's basically
we're
what's
driving
happened.
without a speedometer, basically.
Basically, yeah. Or that, and also no maps. Mm-hmm. we just took the open road and just kind of shot right through. But anyways, what would you say is the last thing or third thing that you've learned?
The last thing I learned is that a lot of the big clients, the whales that everyone is gunning for, mm-hmm. they're mostly with ad agencies.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to, because we thought we were going to be able to get those guys, but at the end of the day, it's like you can't really get them because, again, what are you offering? Just the creative side of things, right?
It's just one thing.
Yeah, just one thing, just the video. And for us, video, not even like the photography or whatever else they need, right? Whereas like these companies need A to Z, right? And who's going to be able to provide that but an ad agency, right?
Yeah.
Or even like some small, like not even like a big ad agency, maybe a smaller ad agency as well, but they have the capability to do that. We don't have that. So I think what we've started to plan out is collaborating more with agencies, but also trying to go after companies that maybe have been um, looked over by ad agencies, or that maybe weren't even thinking about getting into the space. Maybe they had an idea of getting into the creative field. That could be an opportunity for us.
Mm-hmm.
I think we already started doing that a bit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we have been planning for it. Like this, like 2020 was, I'd say, the start of when we really kind of sat down, reflected on the business, and started planning it forward. It's almost like a 5-year review we did.
Mm-hmm.
And
We should mention that we also kind of figured out our vision for the company as well. We're still trying to figure it out too, but we didn't even have like
we had nothing set in stone. We just said
no mission statement, no vision for the company, none of that, right?
Yeah, we had some rinky-dink ones when we started the business, because we did make a business plan when we started, but it wasn't very well thought out back then, because we thought, oh, we're creating video, like there's such a huge demand. Yeah, what do we do? We do video, that's it.
Yeah, but I think other video production companies are in the same state that we're in.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to say all, but I'm pretty sure a good portion are, because if you look at their mission statements or visions, it's the most generic stuff ever, right?
Mm-hmm.
It basically sums down to, we do video. That's really
pretty much what every company
says.
says.
It sums down to.
It's really hard to differentiate yourself from the rest of the competition when a lot of them are communicating similar messages on the type of work that they do.
But that's hard. But I think the reason for that is that you kind of have to, because unless you niche yourself into a particular thing, that might eliminate a lot of income streams for you, right?
Yeah.
Like if you say, I'm strictly focusing on this niche, that might work out and you might become really good at that niche and live very comfortably. But you might not as well, right? So if you say, I'm strictly focusing on promotional videos, what about clients that need event coverage, interviews, and all the rest, right?
Right. What, do you turn them away?
Yeah, right.
So I guess that's also one thing that we were trying to determine, and we figured, we're kind of still learning. We're still learning the business. We're still learning. Like you're always learning. That's
Yeah.
what I've learned. Is I've learned that you're always learning.
You learn to learn.
And especially now with the whole COVID-19 situation, that pretty much derailed everything. But it allowed us to focus a little bit more on how our planning is going, right?
Yeah.
So now it's just a matter of, like, we're not that we're waiting, but businesses aren't really lining up to create a hell of a lot of content, right? Especially,
and no one's in the position to turn away business, especially at this point. So it's kind of like whatever comes, it's like I can't really say no unless I'm going to lose money on it, right?
Exactly.
And even then you kind of try to make it work, because the people I've spoken to, they're taking on like other videographers in the field and who might have some companies on our level. They're like, from what I've heard, like they're taking on some work, and when I heard what they were charging, I'm like, oh, that's very low compared to what I know they charge. And it's like, hey, man, times are tough. You got to do what you got to do.
Everybody's just taking on whatever work they can, whatever it is, like I'm sure a lot of people are not being very picky with the pricing, like I did a project about a week ago. Like this was a freelance based one. And they asked me what my rate is. I told them, and then they asked me, is it possible to do it just for a little bit less? And I said, yep, you know what? Whatever. Yeah. I'm not gonna argue. Like, it's been like 2 months since we've done any work. The last project that we did any work for was that the Cherry Blossoms project. Yeah, when we worked with Signal Films for it. They took on that project and they needed us to come in and help film and do the live stream, and that was pretty much the only project we did during the whole lockdown.
It was a great project too.
Yeah,
we were
it was
in
a lot of
empty
fun.
High Park. It's just us and the cops. That was fun.
Yeah, no, I definitely want to bring on the owner of Signal Films, Adam. Yeah, I feel like he would be a great guest to bring onto the show and just kind of share his story, because he has also a pretty interesting story um, of how he's gone into the business, because I think he's been in it for
A long time, right?
for at least a decade, for sure. But anyways, so the last thing that I would say that I learned in the business is that every client is different. There is no one size fits all. You know, you can't just get like a simple hat and give it out to everyone. You know, like, yeah, typically that would work, but you know, when it comes to clients, every single one has different needs. I remember about 2 years ago, we were going through a stage where we realized, okay, we want to focus, you and I, more on the creative. We need to bring someone in to handle sales. We've tried this many times. And I think this was kind of like
we tried it twice.
I'd say 2 or 3 times.
Twice. No, it was 2 times.
Yeah, but I think this last one was the one that kind of was the nail in the coffin. We met this one other kind of business development person who works with different wedding companies and agencies, and he just handles strictly sales for them. And we thought, great. He's a little familiar with this business. We can maybe bring him on board to kind of handle that aspect, you know, do a little bit more outreach, because yeah, we can do a little bit of it, but we need someone to just
It'd be nice to
focus
have
on it.
someone just do that, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And with that, we talked to him and he was open to doing it with us. But what we realized very quickly was that a lot of people who were handling sales, they were trying to create a templated pricing system.
Well, I think the reason was because that guy mainly worked on the wedding scene, and with weddings you have packages, right? Pricing packages. So he was trying to apply that formula to us. And I don't think that works in the video production field, because every client's needs are different, right? So every estimate that we give to a client is tailor-made for that client's project
and for their needs. Yeah.
And it'll never be the same. It'll always change. There'll always be something different.
Well, he was basically creating a pricing system that was tiered around the client deciding what technical things they would need.
Yeah. Which clients don't know what they need.
Clients don't know that. Corporate clients and corporate clients typically come to companies like ours so that we just handle everything for them.
Yeah.
They give us the budget, and based on that budget, we give them a recommendation on the resources that are needed, how much it will cost, and when they're happy with it, they sign off, and then we move in. We're not going to tell them, okay, if you want, you know, for $2,500, you can get one videographer for XYZ.
You get
money.
one audio up, and
one
you get
audio.
It doesn't work like that.
Yeah, like it doesn't. Like, you can't like pick and choose like different creative tools that are needed for the process.
Unless that client was an ex-video producer, he won't know.
Yeah.
And that, I'm not saying because they're ignorant. It's just because they just don't know the process, right?
They don't know the process, and they don't want to know. They're
I don't know how my accountant gives me back a return every year. I just trust him to do his job.
Exactly. You know? Oh man, that was. Here's a little bonus thing that we learned, is that get yourself a good accountant right from the get-go. Yes. Because we had, when we started the business, we were doing all the taxes ourselves.
And we found a goofy guy for the first 2 years.
The first 2 years
didn't make sense.
That just messed up everything for us. And when we finally found our accountant, Howard
Silverberg is the GOAT, okay?
He is the GOAT of accountants. And when we went to him, the first thing he said,
he spent 3 hours with us the first time.
No. The first time, here's what happened. We sat down for 30 minutes. He looked over the stuff and he said, come back next week.
He's like, get your numbers right. This makes no sense. Come back next week.
I think it took 3 tries for that.
Yeah, three tries. And I remember the second time we spent like 3 hours with him.
Yeah.
He was expecting half an hour, turned into a 3-hour ordeal.
Poor guy.
He was this close to like yelling at us. I could see it.
I think he almost did once. Like he was fighting the urge. That's how it was for like the first 2 years with him.
Yeah.
And then finally, you know,
we're out in half an hour now.
Yeah, we figured out a system. We know what he needs exactly, and it's become a very simple process. Yeah. So
when we do our tax stuff, I'm always like, I don't want to upset him. I just want to make sure he's proud of us this year.
See, this is what it took for Dario to be good with his taxes. You know, he didn't want our accountant to yell at him. But yeah, so I'd say those are at least that's pretty much the three main things that I've learned. Like we said, when you're starting a business, you might have some ideas of like what you want to do going forward, but there's a lot of things that you're going to learn after 5 years. You're never going to be at exactly the place that you think you are starting out.
That's why 2020 feels like a year where we rebooted the business in a way. It's almost like we took
it's a restart.
It's a restart. We weren't thinking of a name change, but we're kind of holding off on that. We have too many of these cups that we bought.
We've already invested in cups, so that's it.
Yeah, when you spend $700 on cups, that's when you're like, all right, this is it. I'm not moving away.
Especially during COVID season, we can't afford another $800 in cups.
It's funny, like we got the cups, and then like a week later, COVID happened.
Oh,
we haven't even been able to give them out to clients.
I know. We're sitting on a box of maybe 70 mugs that we've been meaning to give to some of our clients. And, I almost forgot I had them. I went down in the basement. I'm like, what is this giant box? And it's the cups. It's the cups. So far, only Howard is a recipient of our mug and our family members.
So yeah, I guess just we restarted the business in a way.
Yeah.
We're trying to apply all the stuff that we learned over these 5 years to the next 5 years,
Yeah. So I guess like for now, it's almost as if, we're starting the business anew. Maybe in 5 years, we'll check in again, see where we're at. We're not going to do the classic, where do you see yourself in 5 years? It's basically, let's plan for growth, as you mentioned. It's still a learning experience for us as it goes. I feel like everyone can kind of relate.
Yeah.
And let's just kind of see where it goes month to month at this point.
We should actually timestamp this date. And then like see in 5 years to the date, have another podcast or have another show episode and see where we're at. That'd be cool to do.
Well, that's basically what it is. Like maybe we could even watch some of the things that we were saying, and then we can look at ourselves being like, oh, look at us at 26 and 27. How naive we are back then, But you never know what the future holds, and I'm kind of glad that we're also doing a show like this because it kind of solidifies and puts into the history books for us, of where we were.
Yeah, like it's interesting because it's especially the first episode, and I guess this one too, it's like an oral history lesson for our company. So it's interesting stuff.
Obviously with the show, one thing we want to do going forward is bringing on other guests that can kind of share not only their experiences, but also using their experiences to kind of give their thoughts on certain topics that are popular within the industry, you know, like for example, finding a work-life balance when you're running your own company. Where does the business stop and then the home life begins? Where we all know this though, that never happens really, especially within the first 5 years.
Yeah, if you're running a business, that's going to be really tricky. That's just one of the sacrifices you have to make, right?
It's a sacrifice that you're going to have to make, and we know how it has been for us. We've been lucky that we've been doing this in our 20s, when we don't have families yet.
Yeah.
Whereas other people are trying to do this while balancing a family with wife and kids. I can't imagine doing that yet, so I'm obviously trying to hold off until as much as we can until at least the business is a little bit more sustainable. That's what I want to do.
We're starting to implement the steps for that though, because we'll start work at like 9-10 in the morning, and then I think after 5 we don't call each other for work related stuff, and then on the weekends those are like off days. So whereas before it was kind of like
it was very random.
Yeah, we'd call each other to start doing work at like I remember like 7 p.m., 9 p.m. at times. To be honest,
I kind of enjoyed those.
I'm more productive at night, so it works for me.
I mean, everyone has productive times, but obviously, though, we have to.
You gotta like have time for work and then have time to just relax and unwind.
Yeah, because you really need to give yourself that time to rest. Because if you don't, then it's gonna be harder to put in that effort to work. I mean, everyone has different productivity times. If you want to schedule in evenings as the time that you work, great. But, that's up to you and the people around you, and your social life as well. That's going to help determine if that's applicable for you. I mean, back in the day, we would be doing our work from 7 p.m. till even 1 a.m. at times. Yeah. I've even done things where I had to do a video edit for like 3 days. It was due within 3 days. I had an idea just as I was going to bed. I had an idea for the video I just wanted to throw on the timeline, and it was around 12 o'clock at night. And I went in to make that change, and 5 hours later, the video was done.
What time did you start?
I started at 12 o'clock at night and finished at 5 a.m.
Jesus.
And the video was done. Like, sometimes you get into, like, how do you call it? You get in the zone. So, with that being said, I think we can leave it at that. Thank you for taking the time to listen to the second episode of the Creatives Grab Coffee show. For all you maybe 2 or 3 listeners out there at this point, we are not at the expectation that there are hundreds of thousands of people.
It's just our friends
watching this, just our close friends and
people we forced to watch this,
and people that we have said, yeah, you should check it out.
Yeah.
But anyways, I think that's that. And anything else you want to leave it at, Dario?
No, I think we covered a lot.
Great. Well,
this is it.
Great. Well, always a pleasure talking with you, and thank you all for listening. So,
you treating me like a stranger on some YouTube show.
Always a pleasure.
Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.
Well, yeah, like, comment, and subscribe, baby.
You don't need to like, comment, and subscribe. That's for like normies.
We don't want you to like, comment, and subscribe.
If anything, don't do it.
Just listen.
Yeah.
Thank you for tuning into the Creatives Grab Coffee podcast.
You can find us on Spotify, YouTube, Instagram, and LinkedIn.
Let us know if there are any topics you would like for us to cover in future episodes.
You can reach out to us at creativesgrabcoffee@gmail.com.